Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video we will create an events React.js app using context and hooks. So you see here we have this form. This is the demo. So the data from these two fields is going to be stored in hooks, and then from there we will store it in a global state, and the global state is going to be in a separate component. And then by storing the data in the global state, we will be able to access it from anywhere in our app without using the props. So here's how it works. Let's say I'm gonna add here live music, and live music is going to be at 11 p.m. and then I want to add business after hours. This is going to be at 4 p.m. and we can also delete this stuff. You see this X right here. I can click and delete them, and now actually I'm going to inspect it, and I'm gonna click on the components, and I will click on the main component, and we see here we have hooks. So if I'll type in something here, let's say live music, the state from the hook is changing too. It is live music, and then the time is going to be 11 p.m. for example, and it's changing as well. And then we have the context. So the context is an kind of an object, and here we have an events, which is an empty array for now. But if I click on add event, this event is getting a value here. This events array, which is an object, and this one is having, and it has the data I just inserted from my from my app. So we have event ID, event which is the live music, and then the time. And if I remove it, it's gonna disappear from here as well. So this is what we will be building in this video. I'm gonna write everything from scratch except the CSS. So if you wanna, I'm gonna just copy the CSS from my repository. So this link is gonna be in the description, so you just can access it. Just click on source, components, and then main CSS file. This is the only CSS we will be using in this app. So this is from where I'm gonna copy it and paste it whenever I get to this file. But I think the first thing I'm gonna do is create this folder components and then main CSS file, and I'll paste it there so you guys don't get confused about this stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to stop my current app. I will close it all the way, and I'm going to create another React app. So I'll type in sudo. It's sudo just because I'm using Ubuntu on my Windows machine. So I have sudo npx create React app, and I will name it events list. And this is gonna take a while, guys, so I'm just gonna pause the video. So here we go, it's done. I'm gonna open my VS Code here. And here I'm gonna open a new terminal. I'm gonna start the npm from here. So alright, this is the new tab. I'm gonna close the current one I had with a demo, and I'm gonna still leave this open till I create this file. Okay, so the app is open now. Let's go to source and let's open app.js, and from the app.js I'm gonna remove the app CSS and the logo SVG from importing them from here. You can also delete them from here if you want to, and I'm gonna remove everything from the app class, and I'm gonna say just hi here. I will save it. I'm gonna create a new folder in the source folder, and I will name it components. components, and then here I'm gonna create a new file which is going to be main.css, and here's where I copy. I'm gonna paste everything from here, so right, I'll paste it here. I will save it, and then I'm gonna create a new file in the components folder, and I will name this file main.js, and then this main.js file is going to be a functional component, but we still have to import the import React, so we import React from React, and we have const main. We don't have any parameters, and here we will have just the, so here we will have the return function, and in the return function we will have our first div class, which is the content. So we have div class name content, and then here we have a div class which is the header, so we have div class name header, and then here we'll have another div which is going to be the layer, so we have div class name layer. This is where we put the events, kind of, we can actually locate events. This is the header title, kind of the app title and stuff like that, and then below our header we will have another div which is going to have the body class, so we have div class name body, and then here we will have the list, so we'll have ul and then li here. Here we will have the events, so this here we will have actually a span, because we have three divs in this li. The first one is going to be the event, and then time, and then the action, which is having that delete button. So we have span class name event, and here we will have, let's say, live music, and we're just hard coding it because we don't have the state and anything else yet. So, and then here we have time. Let's say the time is going to be at 1 p.m. and the action is going to be an HTML code, which is that X sign. So we have here and 10007, and this is the action. Here should be action, so we have class name action, and then this is the code for that X. Alright, we've got this body section here, and then below, actually, in the body section we should also have that form to add a new event. So we have div class name add event, and then here we have the form, and here we have those fields. So we have input, actually there's a class name which is event field, and then we have the value. Actually the value is gonna be later because we have to work on that state before. Now we have type text, placeholder new event, and we want to have the same thing for the second field, which is the time. So the only thing that's changing here is the class name, which is event time, and the placeholder, which is gonna say just the time. And then below we will have a submit button, so we have button class name submit button like this, and this is gonna say add event. So, and then below here we want to output this component, actually const, I misspelled this one, used to say const. Right, and then below here we put export default main. We save it. Actually, we forgot to import the main CSS file, so let's do that. Import main CSS. We saved it, and now let's import the main.js file in our app.js file. So we have import main from components/main like this, and then let's copy. Oops, couldn't solve assets. Oh, actually, there's one more thing. If you saw it, probably already saw it in the CSS file, not this one. In the main CSS file, there's this image which is also in that repository, guys. So if you go back to the source, there's a background image that I didn't mention about. Source assets, and here is that image. So I'm gonna click on this image, and I will download it. It's like this. Is kind of big. This is it's loading so slow because of my internet connection. So I'm gonna go to htdocs. No, not htdocs. This PC here, work, event list, source, and then I will create that folder here. So I will create a new folder, assets, and I will save it here. All right, and I'm gonna go back here. Okay, assets, background, it should work now. But just to make sure, let's copy this main. I mean, let's call this component. Let's save it. Okay, so it looks like it works fine. This is how it looks like for now, because we didn't add probably something. There's something missing. We missed something from here. So let's make sure I didn't misspell any of these classes. So we have, there's content, header, layer. So the header is working fine, and then we have the div class name, body, and then we forgot to add a class name here to the UL tag, which is events. All right, and let's see. Let's save it. Let's see if that fixed the problem. Actually, not. Oh, we actually forgot to. I forgot to say something else. Let's go to index.css file, and let's add a background color here to the body section. So we have background color, kind of grayish. So yep, it looks a lot better now. I'm gonna close this file. Let's see what else is missing here. We're missing something. The fields are not looking properly. So field event. I actually misspelled this one in the CSS file. So let's look for event field. It needs to be field like this. Sorry about that, guys. So I'm just gonna paste it here. I will save it. Let's go back. So everything looks fine. Okay, so we've got this event here, and everything is fine. The UI is ready. So now we should let's store this data in the hooks first, and we will do that in this main.js file. So to do that, I'm gonna leave a comment here, let's say hooks, and then here we will have const, and here we have event. This is for the first field, and then we have set event. The event is kind of the state. The set event is the function. So it's kind of, we have a function that's assigning data to the event state in kind of, and then we assign the use state, and we don't assign anything by default. And just to make sure, we import this use state over here where we import the React, so we'll have use state. And then we want to do the same thing for the time, like this, and then we will say set time, and this is going to be empty by default as well. And now if we go back to go down to the fields, here we can add the on change events. We have on change, and here we call this function one of set event first of all, the set event function, but here we get the event first, and then we have an arrow because it's an arrow function. We have set event, and here we get the event target value. So we have e dot target dot value, like this. All right, and let's save it. Event is assigned a value, but time is assigned a value. Okay, never mind about that warning. Let me inspect it just to make sure this is it's working. So if I click on the main, we have the hooks here. So if I start typing in something here, we have the first state state from the hook is working properly. The second one is not, because we didn't add this on change event to the second field. So we will have on change here, and this is gonna say set time. And then we go back and let's inspect it. All right, first one, second one, so both of them are working fine. And now I'm gonna go back up there. So we are saving the data now. Whenever we're typing in something here, we are storing the data in the hooks. The next thing is to create the state, to create the global state, and to store this data in the global state in the context, and then from there output everything on to the screen. So here is where we'll have to loop throughout our global state and output each of these events here. Okay, so to do that, we should create a new folder in our source folder, and that's going to be the context. So let's go to the source, new folder, and we will name it context. And then here we will create a new file. Actually, we will have two files in this one, but the first one is going to be the global state file. So let's do that. Global state.js, and in this global state we will kind of import. We will create the global state. We'll create the initialize the state first, and create the context, and then provide a we will create a provider, and then we'll add actions and stuff like that. So let's start with importing. So we'll import React and create context T. So we have create context, and we also want to import the use reducer. You'll see where we will use that in the app from React, right? And here we have so let's initialize the state. Below here we have a const, and this is gonna say initial state, and the initial state is having events, as an empty array for now. Events. Then below here we're creating the context, so we have create context, and we export it as a const global global context. Right, so we have export const global context, and here we're creating the context, which is gonna get the initial state as a parameter. So we have create context, and the parameter is initial state. That's how we create a context. And then below here we should create a provider which is going to provide us access to the state from anywhere in our app. So let's see, provider component, and here we have export. There's going to be a const global provider, and then here we will have a parameter which is gonna be children, and this is children because we will create this component. We will call it in our app.js file, so we will have to import this file here, and then we will open the tag, the global state tag here, and then we will close it here. So any other component that's going to be in between this opening and the open and close tag are considered as children. So that's why we assign this children as a parameter here, and this is an arrow function. And here we will have we will use the reducer, the one we just imported from here. Actually, I misspelled this. Shouldn't be capital C, it should be lowercase c, like this. Okay, so here we have const state and dispatch. We will use dispatch later on in the app. Dispatch is gonna have just to give you a brief meaning of this dispatch. This dispatch is gonna store the event type. It's gonna store the data and the action type. And the action type is going to be in another file from because we will have two actions in this app. The first action is going to be add event, and the second one is delete event. Right? So here we will use the reducer. Oops, reducer. And I misspelled this one as well. I don't know what's wrong with me, guys. I apologize for misspelling all this stuff. And then here we will have the app reducer file. So we have app reducer file, and we're gonna send to this file the initial state. And we will have to create this file after we're done here. Okay, so we did that. And now below here we should return it. So we go below, type in return, and here we have the actual tag. So we have global context dot provider. All right, and then we close in the same way. Global context provider, and this global context is gonna have a value. So the value is the following. We put two curly brackets, and we have here the events, which is the state, and we have the state dot events. So kind of we send the events, kind of giving access to the events from here, assigning accessing them. All right, so we've got that, and then here in between these two are going to be the children. So here we have children, this one. All right, now we save it, and let's go ahead and import it from our app.js file. So let's come up here, import. Actually, before we do this, guys, and we're gonna get some errors. So before we do this, let's create the app reducer file. So let's go to our context folder, create a new file which is going to be app reducer.js. Make sure this name is matching this name. And then in the app reducer here, we will have just an export default state, the first parameter, and the action. So it gets two parameters, the state and the action. And here we will have a switch, and the switch is taking in the action type. All right, and we will have a case for each action, but for now we're just gonna leave the default action type, and the default action type is just returning the state. All right, we saved it. App reducer. Let's import this file here now. So we have import app reducer from app reducer. All right, and now we import the global state in our app.js file. So we have import global state from context, and then from there we have the global state, and then we call it here. So we have global state like this. Right, and the one that's closing, we're gonna cut it from here and paste it below our main, the main component. So we have it in this way, right? Now let's save it, and there's an error, doesn't not contain a default export global state. Global state. Something is wrong here. Let's see, app.js global state. Okay, so we shouldn't import the global state in this way. We should actually import it as global provider, and we should use curly brackets. All right, so let's do that. Global provider, and let's replace this the component where we call the global state with global provider like this. And now if we save it, this patch is assigned, event is assigned. We just have some warnings, but that's not a big deal. We will get to them later. So here I want to inspect just to see if the state is working properly. Actually, before we do it, we don't really have much of a functionality here. So, but it's good that we imported it here. So we created the global state. All right, we import the global state, create a context which is getting the initial state as a global context, and then we created the provider which is getting the children. These ones are the children. See, from in between these two tags, which is the global provider, and we have a const state dispatch. The state is the state, and we use the use reducer app reducer. This is the file with the initial state. So if we go to this file, we get the state and the action. The state and the action is going to be in dispatch. This dispatch is going to be used in two. We will use it later on, which is going to have the action and the action type and the state. For now, it just gets the default case because it doesn't have the dispatch doesn't have anything. And then here we just return the global context provider with a value which has the state, and here are the children. So we're assigning the children and just closing the global context. Now all the global state is available in all our apps. So now going to the main.js, we can actually assign the data from here to can store it in a global state. We can take it from these two hooks and store it in the global state. So to do that, we should call first. We should import the global context. So we import with curly brackets, import the global context from, we go back a step, we call it from context, and then global state, like this. So we have the global state here. Now we should get the add events. Let's see here. Using the context, so we assign the data. So here we will have, by assigning the data, I mean whenever we click on this add event button, for now, whenever we type in something that is on change event, it stores the data in the hooks. But what I want to do is I want to store the data in the global state whenever we click on the add event button, whenever we submit this form. So to do that, we should add an action. So here we start with an action, right? And that action is going to, we gotta add that action in the global state. So let's save what we have for now here, the global context here. We don't use it, haven't used it yet here, but let's leave it just like that. Let's go back to the global state. So here is where we add the action. The first action is going to be the add a new event. So here we will have actions, and here we will have a function, and function name is going to be add event. And we get the event, and here we use dispatch. As I said, dispatch, and the dispatch is taking the type, which is add event, and we also get the payload, which is event. Alright, we got a payload, which is event, and we should get this action and put it here where we have the state. We add the action as the add event as a value to our global context. So in this way we will be able to call this action from our main.js file, from anywhere else actually, because the value is, it's here, it's been sent to all this, it's been kind of like giving access to all the children from global provider. Alright, we have the add event. Now we should add this action. Oops, add event, make sure we add it properly. We should make sure we have this action in our app reducer file. So in our app reducer file, we will have a case, and the case is going to be add event. Alright, and this add event case is going to return the current state, and then here we assign the new state to the current state, which is events. So we have events, and then we have the action dot payload, and here is the state dot events. All right, we've got that here. There's an error somewhere here. It's just okay. I shouldn't have these semicolons here. Okay, I'm saving this. I'm going back to my main.js file, and in the main.js file now I can call this global context. I can call the action. So we have const, and the action is add event. This is the action. And I'm calling this one from use context, and here is the global context. So I'm using the global context. Use context, global context, the one we import from the global state. Okay, so having this in place, now we should have an on submit kind of function. So we should add that in our form here. So on submit, we're gonna call this function on submit as well, and let's create this method right here. So we'll have const on submit. This is an error function, but actually we're gonna take in the event over here. and we're gonna prevent the default submission of the form. So we put e dot prevent default. All right, and then here we will have a const new event, and we will assign the data from our hooks to the global state. So to do that, we should type in const. We will have another const here, and this const is going to be new event. All right, and this is an object. So we have the ID, because if you remember, I was showing in the demo, we should have an ID for each event. So the ID is going to be a random number. So I'm going to use math.lore parenthesis math.random function, and this is going to be 1. I don't remember how many zeros, 8 zeros. Let's leave it like that. So we have math floor. So this is going to generate a random number to our ID. I mean, it's not best practice to generate IDs, but in this app it's just a demo, small app, so you can play around with this math random function. And then we assign the event and the time. The event and the time are these ones from here, from the hooks, as I already said. Okay, so, and then after this, we call the add event function, and we send a new event to that action. So we have add event. This is the function, this one, add event, and we assign the new event variable, which has stored this object with the new event. So we save it. Use context is not defined. We should import it here where we import the use state, like this. Now if I go back to our app, and if I inspect it, going to components, main, and if I type in something here, the hook is updating. If I type in the time hook is updating, and I'm also checking the context events here. If I click on add event, the context event, so we have here the data is being stored in the events context. So that's good. Now what we should do is we should output the data to the screen from our global state. So our first action works. We're storing the data in global state. Everything is fine. There's just one thing I want to do here more. I want to I want to reset these two fields whenever I click on add event. And I'm gonna do that right below here, add event. So I'll put here reset form. Reset the form, and basically we just call the set event hook, and we assign an empty string, and for the set time as well, like this. So now here, whenever I will type in something here, and if I click add event, it actually doesn't disappear. That's really weird. Okay, set event. Actually, I know why, because we don't have the value here. We didn't put the value in the fields yet. That's why it doesn't get updated, because we're updating the hook. If you pay attention here, let me refresh it. So if you see here, the hooks are empty. If I add something here, the hooks are getting assigned a value. If I click on add event, everything from the hooks disappears. All right, but everything in global states is staying there. So the data is being stored. Everything is fine. We just have to add the value here, but in order to do that, we will so to do that, we should add a value attribute here, and this is gonna get the event hook, and this one is going to get the time like this. So if we go back and try it now, yep, now it works. Everything disappears from here, but everything stays in the global state. Now let's go ahead and output all these states to the screen. So where we have this UL, we want to create another component which is going to be event. So in our components folder, we'll create a new folder which is going to be event, and then in this folder we will create a new file which is going to be event.js, and this event.js file, it's going to get, so let's import React and the use context, because we want to output data from global state and we need the global context. So we import everything from React, and then here we want to import the global context. So import global context from we were going back two steps, and we want to open the context slash global state like this, and then here we have const event capital letter, okay, and then we're getting the item from the events. Okay, event is an item, and then we have, oops, this is an arrow function. So here we have const. Actually, before we do that, let's just output. So we have return, and then here we have the li and everything we had here. So let's cut this off from here and let's paste it here. Oh yeah. Okay, we paste it here and then build, but instead of live music we will put unit context item. Okay, having this item, I'm thinking let's leave it like this for now. Let's just export it as default. I just want you to understand where this data is gonna come from, because I have it in my mind that this is an item. An item, there's gonna be a loop map. We're gonna loop through the whole global state, and we will send an event at a time to this component. That's why we get just one item as an event. The event is just the component, but this item, this is just one event. So let's just export it. Export default event. Jesus Christ. Alright, we export the event. I'm gonna save it. Let's go back to our main.js. Let's import this file. Import event from event slash event, and here we will have the UL. We want to call this event component, but we will call it in a different way. So this is kind of like how it should be, but it's not in the right way. To do it in the right way, we should call the events. So remember, here we got the action, add event action. From here we should do the same thing, but now just to get the events from the global state. So we have the events and we assign everything to the events. We can't use the same variable. It's gonna throw an error, so we have to assign a new variable for the global context. So using this events variable now, which is having all the state, we put it here in the curly brackets, and we want to loop through it. So we have events dot map, and here we have item, and we get as an item. This is an arrow function, and here we have the component, which is event, and the key. We need the key here because it's gonna throw an error. JSX React needs a key for each element, so we have item, item dot ID, and then the item is item. Okay, and now we have to close it like this. Alright, so now we take one by one and send it to the event component. Now if I save it, and if we go back here, we can call it get the event, and from the event, instead of live music, we have the curly brackets, we put event dot event, which is the stuff from that form, from the global state, and then here's the time. So we have item dot time. Alright, and we just export it here. So here use context is defined but never use, global context is defined but never used in the event.js. In the event.js, we will use this later on whenever we will delete, because we should create this action. So just leave it right now like this for now. Let's go back and let's see what's going on here. So if we add live music now, the time is 11 p.m. we press enter, the event is being added here. So everything works fine. We see here the context, the state, let's say something like morning meeting. So we have morning meeting, it's gonna be 9 p.m. So if I click on add event, the event is being added here, but then the delete button is not working. So we should create a separate action. Now we should create an action for the delete, like delete action. So to do that, let's go back to the global state, and here let's copy everything we have for the add event, and let's paste it below, and this is gonna be the delete event action. So we have delete event action. Now here the type is going to be delete event, and the event, we're actually gonna send the ID instead of the whole event. So we'll send just the ID. Now sending the ID, let's make sure we assign it to the global context in the return function here. Delete event. Let's save it, and now let's go back to the app reducer and let's add the case for the delete event. So here we will have case. This case is going to be delete event, and we will have a return function, and the return function is we have here curly brackets, we get the current state, and then we have events. We assign to the events the state dot events dot filter. We're gonna filter everything we assign to this state, and we want to assign all the states, all the events from the state except the event on which we clicked with our mouse. So whenever we will click on that event, we're gonna send the ID. So here that's what we do. We get event arrow function event.id different than action.payload. So we assign all the events except the one with the ID we just clicked on, and in this way we remove it. We remove the one we want to remove. Okay, this looks fine here. We save it, and now let's go back to the event.js file. And in the event.js file, we want to call the global context here. So we have const, and the action, kind of like we want to get the action. So we have delete event. We want to call this action from the context. So we have use context global context. Okay, now we have this delete event, and we can call it here on click event. So we have on click. All right, in this way, parentheses, arrow function, delete event, and as a parameter we send, as I say, we send just the ID. So we have item.id. So we're sending everything to this reducer.js throughout this action delete event. So if I save it now, and if I go back here, and if I add something, and if I click remove, it deletes it from there. So it seems like everything works fine. Let's add live music. Well, 12 o'clock, and let's say business after hours, 5 p.m. Whatever. We can add any kind of stuff here, random stuff. So if I click on this one, I want to remove business after hours. If I click on it, removes it. Just it does. You see, it didn't click on this X just because if I inspect it, this whole link is like a whole column. That's why. So if I click, it just can play around with the CSS, but it works properly. So if I click on this one, it's gonna remove it, and then if I click on this one, it's gonna remove it, and it's gonna remove everything from the context as well. So if I check this main context and the events array is empty. Okay, so that being said, guys, thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for my channel, and I will see you in the next video tutorial.